As usual, this is an unexpected live stream, so just bear with me. Join if you want to, or you can catch it on a replay. I've been talking all day. I feel like my whole life is just talking to people all day. I'm still restricted from LinkedIn, so obviously pivoting my business strategy has been fun the last 2 months, but I'm getting through. Man, it's interesting. I have this shadow of a thought. I'm like, I don't understand how Tucker Carlson is still on TV. I said that. I said, I don't understand how he's still on TV. Not saying that I don't like Tucker. I love Tucker. Matter of fact, when I always, the first thing I will say when I get on YouTube, because I usually get my news from YouTube, is let me see what Tucker talking about, right? I love Tucker Carlson. I feel like he's more of a libertarian, more independent than, even the conservative Fox leaning that I think like he had to portray on TV. I think that Tucker is way more independent than I think that Fox audience and even just the Fox network, in my opinion. So I was very disappointed to hear of. First, they tried to say it was a mutual departure, but it was a firing. And it was unfortunate because I think of all the newscasters, I felt like he was humorous, but he was also real and he was also very objective in telling people what we needed to be thinking about. And that's why he was America's top news anchor, and Fox had one of the top shows in this nation's, or the top show, I should say, because of Tucker. And so, it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, Fox is going to pivot. They'll do something different. But let me tell you something. We live in an interesting time. We live in a very interesting time where people are being projected as expendable content creators, people who are making a difference. We are being seen as expendable. I got restricted from LinkedIn. And honestly, in the broad scheme of people like Matt Walsh, who's getting attacked by YouTube for his opinions about the same thing that I was restricted from LinkedIn about, and even you got Tucker Carlson, who has always been very, very objective, and he's been a very Christian type person. I think that Pussycat Dolls interview could have been one of the things too, because she mentioned that was a really good interview that he did on Fox Nation. She talked about how she mentioned Jesus. The girl said Jesus, and she was scolded for it. You know what I mean? So that interview was very revealing about how the industry is very anti-God, very anti-Christ. When you want to talk about the anti-Christ, we are living in the spirit of the anti-Christ right now. Everything that is happening in America right now, it's anti-Christ. So when you have people like Tucker Carlson, Matt Walsh, people like me who are unapologetically Christian, right? We are doing the best we can to live a Christian lifestyle. We're not perfect people, but we understand what God hates, what he abhors, what he tells us to abstain from, and we do that. And it's like, look, we can't tell other people what to do. We can't. And honestly, it's not even like when it comes to my opinions about all of these cultures and movements, it really is, it's none of my business until you make it my business. Until you start trying to infiltrate your habits, your lifestyles into my children's life or other people that I care about, and that's when it becomes problematic. And I think, Matt Walsh and a lot of these other people will say the same thing. We don't care about trans people. They can exist until the cows come home. But when they start superimposing their lifestyles on other people, demanding that people accept them and affirm them, as something that they think that they are, that is when the conversation becomes problematic. Again, especially if you're a grown ass man looking like a defensive lineman talking about you identify as a woman. Okay. I identify as a unicorn. That don't mean that I have to force people to accept the fact that I'm a unicorn. I just don't. I don't really. identify as a unicorn. But I'm just saying, if I did, it would not, and I got a little, what do they call them things, horns or whatever they have, surgically implanted on my head, and I walked around every day existing and telling people I'm a unicorn, right? It is not my place to force people to accept me as being a unicorn. They're going to look at me as being mentally ill, right? Because they're going to say, you're a human being. You're a human. You're human identifying as a unicorn. That does not seem right. And that's just to say that people like Tucker Carlson, they were unapologetic. He's unapologetic in calling out these agendas. Some of the things that the mainstream liberal media wants to suppress from the American public. Like, we're not getting news anymore. We're getting selective information and opinions that people want us to hear that inflames our heart. And that's just the weirdness of America right now. It's just like, it's funny, in 2020, 2021, the Democrats had their base talking about how they hated America, and they were talking about how America was really, really bad, right? And now they're like, oh, this is pro-America, blah, blah, blah. This is the next wave of democracy, is having all these Gen Zers be gay and LGBTQ. That's their thing, right? And I'm just thinking to myself, like, more and more, it's like, God, I hate living in this country. Like, I hate, and then it's like, I can't hate it too much, because if I lived in another country, I probably wouldn't be able to say half of the shit I'm saying. But it's like there are certain fabrics of this country I absolutely hate. And it's a shame, because America is one of the last free worlds. And I said this a couple of years ago. It's like, we are letting people inflame us out of our freedoms. We are being inflamed out of our freedoms. And I think, the sad part about all these insecure, low value people who are jumping on a bandwagon of ignorance is that when all is said and done, they are going to realize that, just like Black people, right? They are being leveraged, and they're not going to be what they think they're going to be at all. They are votes. They are yuppies and nothing more. And I was thinking about systemic racism, right? And I finally figured out how the system works, right? And this is just my opinion. But when I think about systemic racism based off of the observations of American society in the last just 3 years, I'll tell you how the system works, and I'll tell you how they're working the trans kids, right? The same fashion that they work Black people in America. So systemic racism has to work at the foundational level. Remind you, okay, we are living in a very anti-Maslow society, right? I want you guys to think about that. We are living in an anti-Maslow society. So in order to really infiltrate a person's mind into their place, in society, or even just down to their identity, you got to start at very elementary age. So, the first institution of everybody's life is their home, right? It's their home, right? We know that Black families, Black women, especially in the 50s, we had a higher marriage rate and a lesser divorce rate. We had very cohesive families. And we've heard this before. Thomas Sowell is a genius on this topic. And outside of even Black people, I will say Milton Friedman is a genius, and Daniel Patrick Moynihan is a genius on this topic of what happened to Black people in America, right? And it was a systemic effort to keep Black people ignorant, marginalized, and thought. Now, you guys got to think about it, and this is not being anti-Semitic, but we don't talk about the Holocaust. We don't indoctrinate Jewish children about the Holocaust like we indoctrinate Black kids from K through 12. Why? And every Black kid that I've met growing up, when we talked about slavery, we always felt shitty as Black people, like this country is against us. There's nothing progressive about the lessons that they want to teach in school about slavery. That's why all the Black people who keep lobbying for public schools to teach our children our tribal lessons and lessons about their identity, all of you Negroes should be slapped. All of you Negroes should be slapped because it's not a Black face creating those curriculums. And most of them are based on highly white supremacist doctrines to keep the Black person in a marginalized state. So that first step of the system is making sure that Black kids know that at the very elementary level, you are a struggle class in America. Now you translate this to what they're trying to do to the kids in school, right? Most kids don't think about sexual identity, gender dysphoria, none of that stuff. We are literally dealing with a nature versus nurture battle. And at the K-12 system, they have decided to nurture our kids. So as opposed to our kids going to school and existing as their natural selves, just going there and learning the fundamentals, reading, math, science, whatever, they're teaching them, they're planting the seeds of gender dysphoria by allowing teachers to talk about their partners and put all this pride stuff that has nothing to do with core curricular education. But that's how you plant the seeds. Plant the seeds in Black kids, civil rights and racism, Black History Month. We're going to do that K through 12 all throughout your life so you know you are a struggle class victim in America. Now with the trans, I'm going to tell you, I'm homeschooling my son right now because his preschool said that they are a gender non-conforming environment. I asked her, what does that mean? She said that they do not use gender assigned pronouns. So I said, so what does that mean? You're not going to call my boy a boy? She said, we don't use gender assigned pronouns. I said, thank you very much. And I did not take my kid to that school. I'm going a different path. But you plant the seeds. Now imagine if I was not a parent that was aware of this agenda to manipulate the children. I wouldn't be putting my kids on radar. I would be blissfully oblivious and sending them off to school with some of these indoctrinators that are going to mess up their mind. And this is how systemic racism works because it happens at the corporate level too. Oh, let's get some Black women to talk about how fat they are. Let's talk about Black women and their hair, all the things that have made Black women feel insecure. We're going to put that at the corporate forefront. We're going to have all these victims of it, right? And then our corporate, product is going to be the solution, but it never really is because a lot of these women are still miserable. But this is what the corporations are doing. We're going to use people like Dylan Mulvaney, right, to push this agenda, normalize it. We're going to use people. We're going to elevate these people, right, to normalize it. We're going to go and put all these books in the kids section to confuse them so that they see it everywhere, so that we normalize it. That is what's happening in American culture right now. We are normalizing dysfunction. It's a systemic effort because the corporations are in on it. That's why they're using Dylan. That's why you got news networks exploiting what they say are drag kids. Like, I think the most abusive thing I've ever seen was a news story about autistic Down syndrome drag kids. Like, are you serious? Are you serious? And this is the weirdness that is happening in America, that it has been continuously normalized by mainstream media, mainstream corporations, you have all these people who are being elected into government officials to push these agendas, to be voices to these agendas. They're not talking about getting people jobs, bringing jobs and manufacturing and drilling and all that good stuff that make America great back. No, they're talking about we should be able to take this person's child and chemically, mentally, chemically, and physically castrate them. This is what these people are going to be elected to push. You know what I mean? So before you elect anybody these days, you got to ask them straight up, what are you going up in that office to do? What are you going to be talking about? Because if it's not about more money in my household that I'm making, I don't even know what you're talking about. But Americans, we are so effing weak right now. And it's like, I'm not trying to be like negative, but we are so weak. This nation is weak. It is infiltratable, and we are being infiltrated by these ideological weirdos. And yeah, they got money. They got a lot of money. But guess what? They still need people buying stuff. And the average consumer's power is pretty much is never going to be at the ballot box, man. Cuz you're literally electing these tokens, these props, these people who are just, infiltrate in front of you. It's always going to be your pockets. It's always going to be your pockets. That's always going to be the everyday person's defense against these yuppie, because somebody has to pay them. Somebody has to fund them. Somebody has to put money in their businesses and their corporations, and people are tired of these agendas. We see what's happening with Anheuser-Busch, and I kept trying to, figure out, like, why would these companies do this? Like, I kept asking, like, why? Anheuser-Busch, this, to go completely against your brand. And, if you're a fan of Black conservative perspective, Greg Foreman, he kind of brought it on home. And this is something that I mentioned in another video too, about shareholders being more important than customers or stakeholders. And he echoed that today, where he was talking about this is woke capitalism. Like, Anheuser-Busch made a conscious decision. They made a conscious decision putting Dylan Mulvaney in front of their Budweiser audience, but they did it calculated. Because you guys got to see, when did Dylan's video dropped on April Fools? Anheuser-Busch was smart enough to protect their profits during March Madness, not to drop Dylan. Dylan did not get dropped in March Madness. He might have had a March Madness call out, but bro, that was April 1st. So they were calculated in when they were going to lose their profits. They knew we were going to take a hit from this. This is going to be, they calculated this. Like, with the boycott, right? They probably calculated that people were going to boycott them, because a lot of people who buy into their product are not wokesters. These are everyday working people that like to come home, have a nice beer, and sometimes they even drink crappy beers like Bud Light. I'm not a Bud Light fan, so. But these are hardworking people. They have nothing to do with the trans culture. A lot of them don't even care about it, as long as it's not put in their face. They have no thought about it. They just want to go home, drink their beer, and not have it associated with a movement. But they calculated it. They absolutely calculated this, because they absolutely knew we cannot drop Dylan in the beginning of March. We're not even about to mess with our profits in the middle of March. We are letting all of March Madness go through before we drop Dylan. So these companies are calculating what they are doing. And I think that, smart consumers need to realize that, this is the reality in America right now. We are in an ESG world where these companies are going to virtue signal with all kinds of agendas that their stakeholders want them to have. And that's just, where it's at. And I don't know how that works out, in the market and everything, because honestly, it doesn't seem to be going well for these companies, but, who knows? I mean, I just think it's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd to me. And, this is just weirdo America, guys. I mean, it's just weirdo America. And, it's definitely the spirit of Antichrist. Like, we are in the spirit of the Antichrist, because, I mean, when you got people who can't even say Jesus without getting scolded, everything is the Christians' fault. It's because we can't get our movement into the population and accept it, because it's the Christians' fault, because they have values, because they actually believe in a higher power that has set these rules and ideas about societies that are functional and make sense. And these people want to go against them. And it's creating disorder. It really is. I mean, I find, the modern trans activists to be very violent, some of them. They're very entitled. When you talk about, we don't have rights, we want our rights. And it's like, you guys aren't fighting for rights. You're fighting for entitlements. You're a dude that looks like a linebacker that now is living as a woman, and you got lipstick on, and you're saying, I want to share spaces with women and young girls, and I look like I should go play for the Steelers. It's like, this is entitlement. This is entitlement that for the sake of this person, we're going to basically make other people uncomfortable. Just like Liam Thomas, or Leah Thomas is what they, whatever, like to be referred to. He's talking about, we should band together to fight the patriarchy. It's like, let me tell you something. America is a patriarchy society. The only group in this country that are not patriarchy, we know what group is not patriarchy. We know what group is a matriarchal group in this society, but I don't want to be labeled anti anything. I don't want to be anti-Semitic or anything like that. But those are matriarchy people, okay? And many of them, I should say, that's the matriarchy. Most Christian Americans, we are patriarchy. So when you're talking about, some of these arguments, I'm starting to see some patterns. And I mean, Kanye kind of put us on to some of these patterns. And I'm not talking about all the people from that group. I'm not going to generalize them like Ye did. But to me, the patterns do not lie. Some of these, like I would say not all, but some of these so-called Zionists, they are the real supremacists to me. They really are. And they are the main ones who will fix their lips to argue with a Black person about what they should think about their Black identity in America. And it's like, what is your investment in my thinking oppressed? And and then they'll be quick to call me anti-Semitic when I start calling them out. Like, let's talk about, like, there was like, oh, you sound so dumb not wanting slavery to be taught. It was like, you sound so dumb not wanting to have a Jewish History Month. You sound so dumb not wanting to have the Holocaust taught through K through 12 to y'all people in a skewed way. You sound dumb. See, it's easy to tell Black people what we should be thinking, but when we start to put our lips on other people's group, like, let me go and say that I'm going to do some film on the Holocaust. It's like, many people in the Jewish community would not like that. They would not like that. But many in that community believe that it is okay to continue to infringe upon Black people. Black people, like, and I'm not generalizing them. I said many from them, because these are personal interactions online debating these topics, that they feel like they have a right to talk about Black people and our experiences and what we should be thinking about. And then it's like, when you flip the script, it's like, you sound anti-Semitic. And it's like, no. Why can't we talk about the Holocaust just as much as we talk about Black people and slavery and civil rights and what we've gone through? Since everybody want to put their lips on Black people all the time, let Black people start putting their lips on other people. Then all of a sudden we get labeled and we get attacked like Kyrie did. So that's just to say that America is a wacky, fake place. We have wacky, fake leadership. And that leadership is destroying our country. And I've said, if you graduated from school after, like, I want to say maybe 2008, you probably had some indoctrinating education. You probably didn't even know what Schoolhouse Rock was, because they used Schoolhouse Rock as a learning tool when I was growing up. And you probably didn't have that. You probably don't even know how politics really work. And so some of these people who want to act like the federal government should be telling state governments what to do, it's like, you need to go and just put on an old episode of Schoolhouse Rock and just teach yourself how this stuff is supposed to work, And another thing is, I feel like if people were more educated, they would be more concerned about protecting constitutional rights than jumping on a bandwagon of some of these ignorant social and political arguments, because those are all the distractions. the policies are what really impacts everybody. And those are what we're always distracted with because they're politicking to people. And, Biden just announced that he's going to run again. So we already know it's going to be open season on Black people. I've talked about this in videos before. We might get a public lynching or something to bring the Black Lives Matter gift wrappers out. I call them gift wrappers from Macy's because they only call during the political cycle when the Democrats need to win. They're Democrat ops. So let's see what happens. Are they going to kill a Black person? How is the Democrats going to inflame Black people? I think they're going to try to use reparations. I think reparations is going to be what Joe Biden tries to dangle in front of Black people. And I think that's why they're going so hard in California, right? But I think that's what they're going to dangle. But we'll see. I think towards the end of the year, it's going to get chaotic. It's going to get crazy. I think they'll probably leverage the trans people more than the Black people this cycle because they're growing in numbers. The trans folks, they are growing in numbers. I'm a decent singer of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Go ahead, Dave. And I'm angst at what's being done to the land. I'm telling you, it's crazy. Yes, reparations talk coming. Here's the thing. Reparations, Scott, they're going to dangle that in front of Black people. I don't think Black people are going to get reparations in America. We're not. If Black people get reparations, and I've always said this, we should get it in the form of a tax break, just like the Jewish survivors of the Holocaust get. That didn't even happen in this country. And yet they get a tax break. So why don't we, or tax credit? So just give Black people, if you can prove that somebody is a foundational Black America or an American descendant of slaves, give them a tax break. That's the easiest way to do it. That way you are making sure that they stay working, right? But they're going to get a nice tax break, because of that experience that they had. Like that makes more sense. Giving Black people a lump sum of money is just, to me, did anybody see Dave Chappelle when they gave out the reparations and they were just doing all kinds of stuff? He's like, I just bought a baby. He had a big old Newport truck. I mean, it was absurd, but it was, Dave was really, kind of in a comedic way telling the truth about Black people. That money will be blown. People will be buying stuff that they cannot maintain long term because their spending behaviors would not dictate that they'll be able to maintain some of the stuff that they buy. So it's crazy. Absolutely. It's not affordable. It's not an affordable situation, especially, in a situation where we are already in debt. We have a high debt ceiling. They keep raising the debt ceiling, and then they'll blame it on this. It's like every administration is responsible for why this country is in trillions of dollars of debt, right? And, it doesn't matter to me who's elected. Somebody needs to come in and get a hold of the spending in this nation and the debt. Period. No regular person could exist with the level of debt that the United States have and be sustainable. I mean, they'd be on the streets, right? Because, lenders would be looking at like, what is your liquidity for real? Because you got a lot of debt. You got a lot of debt. I mean, it's insane. Let's see, I saw a family sue for lead paint money. I mean, people will sue for everything. I had my Aunt Lena, she passed on, but she used to be a sue happy lady. If she saw like there's this store called Farmer Jack's, and if she saw a pile of water without no caution sign, oh, she's going to recover from a oopsie fall, like for real. She saw the puddle. She was for real. She was not, I don't encourage people to be dishonest, but that was my auntie. She was about that sue life. Anywhere she could sue somebody, she was ready to sue them. So Yeah, but anyways, I didn't want to make this long. I think Tucker Carlson's are gonna. I can't wait to see what he does next. I think Fox is gonna suffer this loss. Um, and who knows what happens to the network. A lot of people are thinking that Tucker might have saved the network. So, but I really like this takes, and I can't wait to see what he does next. And I'm going to keep my prayers up to you for you guys, because we live in the United States of craziness, and we're la la land. You know, right is now left and left is now right. Up is now down and down is now up. So, Satan got everything crazy. But, if you believe in God, this is a spiritual war. 2 Timothy 3:1-5 tells us that in the last days, these are going to be critical times, hard to deal with. And it lays out what we're going to be dealing with. And ain't that the truth, y'all? Ain't that the truth? So y'all keep your prayers up. I'll see you, Dave. I'll see you, Scott. I love you guys. You guys are so supportive. Like from LinkedIn, y'all are real road dogs, right? If I had a biker gang, Dave and Scott got to be in my biker gang for real, because y'all just road dogs for real. What's up, Patriot Business Consultants? I see you. I was saying, you guys are my writers, and I really appreciate the support, and we just got to keep speaking truth to power. And like Tucker said, once you start practicing telling the truth, it empowers you, and you just, God protects you. And he gives you what you need. So you guys keep your prayers up. I'm gonna be praying for you guys and everybody that follow me, and everybody who has righteousness on their heart. Everybody who is feeling down with this. If you're feeling down around all this stuff, you got God in you, right? Because this is something's not right about this stuff, and your soul is telling you that. So just pray and keep your prayers up, and just try to control what you can control. And you guys have a good one. Bye.